I interviewed more than 20. I sat down one-on-one at Chipotle with more than 25,000 people in the restaurants just to get to know them. Before that, I was a trial lawyer, and I sat down with a lot of people as a trial lawyer too. About 3,000 of them I sat down and took depositions, which is, obviously formal, court reporter, under oath, all that stuff. A little spooky usually for the person in the chair. But through that, I really got to know people very, very, very deeply, especially the 25,000 I sat down with at Chipotle. I sat down really just to get to know them. It wasn't to quiz them about exactly what was going on at work. It was to get to know them first, to demonstrate my respect for them, to just exhibit my curiosity with them. I mean, I'm curious about people, and I tend to see in people something I admire very, very quickly, because everyone's different, right? Everyone's got qualities I don't have. Everyone's got qualities I admire and would like to have. And it's just, there's so much to learn from all sorts of different people. And I think
Colorado is known for great entrepreneurs and great turnaround stories, including this guy who I've gotten to know, Monty Moran, who, among other things, used to run something called Chipotle. And as long as I've known you, you've never once given me a gift certificate or a gift card.
It's a pretty good deal.
Or
you can afford it.
Really? How long were you with Chipotle?
Well, I mean, I was employed as an official employee for just short of 13 years, but before then I was general counsel for the company for quite a long time when I was a lawyer in a private law firm.
But it's weird to be the lawyer and then asked to be the CEO of a pretty sizable national company.
Yeah, it's unusual, I guess.
I mean, what kind of problems did they have that they needed their lawyer to do this?
Yeah, it wasn't so many problems. It's just, I was brought on originally to do real estate leasing. When Chipotle had about 8 restaurants, I started doing the real estate leases to help them not find new locations so much, but sign them up once they found them. And so I started doing that real estate work, and in so doing, I interacted with a whole bunch of people at the company. And over time, they started handing me lots of other different kinds of work that came their way. So, whether it be landlord disputes or slip and fall lawsuits or liquor licensing or patio licenses and everything they threw my way, I've tried to find a way to be of use and to be helpful to them. And so I got to the point where I was actually considered to be general counsel, and I was the go-to guy for problems, you might say.
So you went all the way up to write a book about it. The title is the best part, of course. Love is free, guac is extra.
Yeah, I didn't make up the title. That was Dave. Dave made up the title.
So, as CEO, what did you learn? One of the things I've learned is that people don't understand the role of a chief executive officer. That, other than they are wildly overpaid, agreed, but that the single most important part on any business is that guy. It's not the board, but everything comes from him and goes to him. And when you have the right guy, when you have Stephen Jobs, it works. When you have the wrong guy, it doesn't. What did you learn?
Well, I mean, I guess to the extent that, right guy, wrong guy. If I was the right guy to be CEO of Chipotle, it's because I knew who really were the most important people in the company. And those were actually the people in the restaurants. Okay, they were way more important to the customer satisfaction and our success than I was. The only way I could earn my keep is by helping them to be at their very best. So early on, I identified that the restaurant level general manager, so the person who runs each individual restaurant, was the number one employee that we had to give our attention to make sure that they, had all the tools they needed, that they had all the great leadership, that they had the right vision, and if they did, the good news was, if we had a great general manager in every restaurant, the good news was they'd hire awesome crew, and they'd train them really well, and they'd lead them really well, and they'd create a great customer experience, and they'd make sure the food was delicious and served hot and quickly, and that the customer service was great, and that the place felt alive and it was clean and tidy and organized, and that the equipment was well treated and everything. So right away, I recognized that that's the most important position, and I've just got to get everyone in the company, including myself, focused on making that position the very best it can be. And so that really worked. And there was a lot of specifics as to how we pulled that off, but it really worked.
In politics, we say people are policy, and it's so true. Particularly on a chief executive, president, governor, the AG. People he or she surrounds himself with they make everything happen.
Yeah.
And you screw up there and it just falls apart. How do you find these people?
Well, so at Chipotle, when I started, we had, I think some really brilliant people at the crew level. The problem was we weren't developing them. So what we were doing at that point when I first started is hiring people based on their experience. This is what our HR team had saw fit to do. So we were hiring people, off the streets to come into a management training program, and then they would come out of that management training program, which was 6 weeks, and then they would all of a sudden be the boss over the crew people who had been there all the while. Well, I decided to go ahead and put myself through that training program so I'd understand exactly what it entailed. And in fact, I even did it to the point where I was anonymous. No one knew who I was. So I had them put me in a restaurant where no one knew who I was. This is when I was first starting at Chipotle as president and chief operating officer. So in 2005. So I had them put me in a restaurant, and I went into that restaurant and I trained for 6 weeks and did the entire management training program. And, it was the people who were really training me were the crew level people
Right.
at the restaurant. In other words, the hourly employees. You might say entry level employees. And so those were the people who were training me, and they were great. And they were really helpful, and they were friendly, and they were supportive, and they trained me to do things not as well as they did, right? Because they'd been doing them a long time. So if they're teaching me how to cut an onion, I'm doing that for
Right.
one day of my training. They've done it for years, So they got me sort of marginally decent at every single task, and then after becoming marginally decent at every single task, then if I were a real management trainee, I would have gone on to be a general manager and been the boss, the supervisor of a bunch of crew people, all of whom were better than me at each task they did. So while I was there, I asked them, hey, so what do you want to do? What do you want to do like in 5 years? What are your goals? And almost all of them would be like, well, I really like my job. I'm like, yeah, I know, but what do you want to do? Like, do you want to move on? Do you want to move? And they're like, and so I'd say, would you want to be a manager someday? And they'd look at me exactly the way you look at someone,
Right.
if I said, John, you want to win the lottery today? You'd be like, yeah, what's the catch? Yeah, I'd like that, but what's the catch? So they'd look at me kind of confused, like, yeah, what are you getting at though? There was no, they weren't ambitious to become managers because no one had told them that was a possibility. There was no sort of path of ascension.
So the people who are doing the work and the guy on top, there was just a disconnect.
Yeah,
there wasn't.
There was no way to move up. So realistically,
you're either hired here or you're hired there, and it kind of reminds me of the issue of economic mobility anyway.
Right.
Which is, for me, the magic is the guy who's slicing the onions can become the president someday. This is the magic of America.
Yeah.
So,
and this is
I'm assuming you changed this.
Immediately. I mean, I felt like it was an emergency because I thought this doesn't make any sense. We were hiring people. When you think of hiring people from the outside because of their fast food experience, let me ask you, what is fast food experience? What experience would that be?
Fuel. That's all fast food is.
No, but what's the experience that you have if you've got fast food experience?
Yeah.
You're leaning against the counter going, yeah, no problem. Next, working in a dirty store with mediocre food. I mean, that's usually what the fast food experience is known to be in this country, historically, right? So if you come from that, it doesn't seem like that's a great place to me. To me, that experience isn't as important as character.
So when you put in this change, and the guy who has been slicing the onions for the last 3 years has a shot at becoming manager, or
not a shot at becoming manager. I made an announcement that all of our managers would come from crew within 2 years. All of them. No more outside hires, no more MIT program, no more 6-week training. All of our managers would come from within. And we did it. Within 2 years, it wasn't quite 100%, it was 80 or something. Right. But after about 2.5, 3 years, it was nearly all the people who became managers at Chipotle came from entry-level crew positions. So what we had is these superstars moving up, from entry-level positions up through the ranks. And when I first started at Chipotle, 87% of our crew were Hispanic. But nearly, and there was women.
By the way, it's not bad given the kind of food you're giving.
Yeah,
that's a great thing.
Yeah, it's a Mexican food thing. 87% Hispanic, but the management level people were almost all white and almost all male. When we instituted this new policy of having people come up from the inside, by the time I left Chipotle, more than half our managers were female, more than half our managers were Hispanic, because it started to reflect the people who were in the entry-level positions. So, and it wasn't because we were trying to do something about racial inequality. It was because we were trying to make.
You want to make money.
No, it was because we wanted to make sure that the very best, the people who were great and loyal to the company and came in and worked hard at the low-level positions could move up through the ranks and become executives. And they did.
Right.
Like hundreds of them.
Under your tenure, Chipotle grew tremendously. When you started your involvement, they had what, seven?
Yeah, we had 8 restaurants when I started as a lawyer for the company.
And when you finally got fired and disgraced and for that embezzlement scandal that you were involved with. No, that's not true. But when you decided to hang it up, how big was Chipotle?
Well, we had about, I think, 2,200 restaurants at that point. We had a market cap of over 23 billion, and we had sales of over it was almost $5 billion a year. So it was big.
I also found it fascinating. I know this is a little in the weeds, but the style of restaurant is interesting. This whole growth in what they call fast casual. Yeah. It wasn't a fast food restaurant. It wasn't Taco Bell. It wasn't McDonald's. But you could get what you wanted, and you could get it fast. And you didn't get table service. It's in between, which seems to be the model now for lots of things.
Yeah. It was really brilliant in so many different ways. When Steve Ells started the company, I mean, Steve was a chef at Stars, which is a really upscale restaurant in San Francisco run by Jeremiah Tower, who was a famous chef at that time. Came out of Alice Waters, Chez Panisse, and all that stuff. So
I'm going to nod like I understand what you're saying.
Cool.
Keep going.
Well, someone might appreciate it. So anyway, he came out of there and he wanted to, prove that this really excellent food could be served in a way that was, inexpensive, accessible, fast, and that fast food and a fast food experience didn't have to be a mediocre food experience. And so, and that's what Chipotle was. And so, we use really fresh ingredients, prepared in front of the customer and served quickly in this sort of very transparent format, which made it clear to everyone exactly what was happening. There was nothing hidden. And also very, very quickly, and also is delicious.
Yeah. I want to see if I can segue from that to life after that.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating. So you're able to take this, grow. You're able to connect people from the bottom up, and I think good organizations do that. People who understand what they're walking into. Afterwards, you had some time, become an author. You write the book. First of all, why the book?
Well, the whole time I was at Chipotle, I mean, we created this culture that was really, really beautiful. I mean, some people said it was like a cult, but in a good way. Like people really loved each other. People felt really empowered. Everyone in the company. I mean, like everyone.
They all wore small idols with you on it, which I thought was not cultish, but a little odd.
It's nonsense. But anyway, but people really were really grateful for the kind of culture we had, the kind of upward mobility they had, the fact that we recognized that people aren't, you might say ordinary people can accomplish extraordinary things, but they're just not ordinary. The people we had were terrific. They just might be entry level and new to a job. But once you expose them to the right circumstances and give them the right training, they were tremendous. And we had, just the last year I was there, we promoted 10,500 people into management positions. So all of this culture really worked, and it produced awesome results for our company, financially and for shareholders, but also just in the hearts and minds of the people who worked there. And so it was really special. So people always said to me, "Man, you should write a book about this. You should write a book about this. You should write a book." Or people would say, "Hey, where'd you come up with this leadership style?" And I was like, I don't know. And so I didn't really answer it. I was, I don't know. It
just made sense.
It made sense. And that's actually true. And I really started this leadership style at my law firm.
You didn't go to the Harvard Business School.
No, I didn't go to business school at all.
You were a lawyer.
I was a lawyer.
Not a restaurateur, not a manager.
No restaurant experience. I worked at Dairy
strategist.
Queen when I was young for a couple of years.
Really?
Yeah, I was a Dairy Queen guy. I was back in the kitchen, doing the chicken
back
sandwiches.
when they had food.
Back when it was like a Dairy Queen brazier.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I made food, but I loved that job at Dairy Queen. But yeah, so people ask me, how'd you figure this out? And really, I figured it out at my law firm, building a culture there as a lawyer. And then Steve Ells came and saw the culture at my law firm and said, "Man, this is awesome. Could you do it at Chipotle?" And long story short, about 5 years later, I said, "Okay, I'll try it." But anyway, so there was a lot of people. There were a lot of people telling me, "Gee, you should write this down." I had one guy when I left say, "Hey, tell me when you write your book on leadership, because then I'll throw away every other book on my shelf on leadership and have only yours on the shelf." So it was a really nice comment. So comments like that and hundreds of others like it, and especially after I left, emails and texts and whatever. And I thought, okay, I'll try it. And so I put this book together, and it was really fun to do it. And it enabled me to sort of take the time to really slow down and answer the question about exactly how you do create a really healthy culture in a company that can not only help the company succeed beyond everyone's wildest dreams, but can also help the people in the company, and succeed.
And then you took that and went on the circuit. Now you do lots of self-improvement stuff. You're kind of the Tony Robbins. So you got people in crowds. You're healing people. No. So you wrote the book, but you got into something else. And I see a tie over, only because I know you. The way you changed Chipotle was talking to ordinary people.
Yeah.
You started talking to the people who are there slinging the beans and doing the work and shopping, and it's hard. It's hard work.
Yeah.
And so connecting to them, and so you wanted to connect more.
I love connecting with people.
And so you wanted to record connecting with people, which I've tried and apparently is illegal in several states, but you did it differently. What did you do?
You're doing it right now.
Yeah.
Well, how did I do it differently? I interviewed more than 20. I sat down one-on-one at Chipotle with more than 25,000 people in the restaurants just to get to know them. Before that, I was a trial lawyer, and I sat down with a lot of people as a trial lawyer too. About 3,000 of them I sat down and took depositions, which is,
Right.
Obviously formal, court reporter, under oath,
Right.
all that stuff. A little spooky usually for the person in the chair. But through that, I really got to know people very, very, very deeply, especially the 25,000 I sat down with at Chipotle. I sat down really just to get to know them. It wasn't to quiz them about exactly what was going on at work. It was to get to know them first, to demonstrate my respect for them, to just exhibit my curiosity with them. I mean, I'm curious about people, and I tend to see in people something I admire very, very quickly, because everyone's different, right? Everyone's got qualities I don't have. Everyone's got qualities I admire and would like to have. And it's just, there's so much to learn from all sorts of different people. And I think another thing is that I was just born sort of intensely curious. So I just want to know about people. And what I've learned is when you really want to know about someone and you bring to that interaction with them deep curiosity and a desire to really understand them better, that in and of itself is sort of complementary to them. It puts them in the position of being your teacher. You're sort of their subordinate. So even though I sat down with them and I was a quote-unquote
Right.
CEO, I would sit down with crew people and say, hey, how are you doing? And
Did that freak them out? I mean, because you got the CEO who has your life in his hands. He can hire you, fire you, transfer you, do whatever. And you want, hey, Jim.
It didn't freak him out. I mean, some of them said like,
Monty wants to sit down and chat with you. What? Well, I didn't take it. It wasn't me.
No. I think that it didn't freak people out because I sat down with, in a way that was non-judgmental, totally curious, and just wanted to get to know them. I mean, at first they were like, whoa, you're the CEO? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, I didn't think you'd be like this. And I was like what? And they'd be like, well, you're so normal. And I was like, I learned then that you're not supposed to be normal when you're a CEO. But it turns out you can be. You're allowed to be normal. And so I sat down with them and said, no, I'm just a person like you. And I want to have your job someday. They might joke about, they weren't joking. I want to have your job someday. And I was like, yeah, you can. The sky's the limit. It's like that's what we're trying to develop here.
Is that just, Leadership 101? Of course you can.
It would be.
I'm gonna Tony Robbins you up right now. You can have everything you want if you just want it.
I totally believe it's real. I mean, anyone there could do anything they wanted, and I believe that. And I think not only did I believe that, I guess I sort of proved it, by putting in place systems whereby tens of thousands, actually hundreds of thousands of people moved up into management positions and up through the ranks, and eventually took on, many of them, very, very high positions at Chipotle. I'm talking about very high-paid executive positions, overseeing thousands and thousands of people that came from crew, and they got there quickly. And why did they get there quickly? Well, they worked really, really hard. They cared a lot. They tried to make the people around them better, and they really embraced the kind of leadership style that I was, trying to share with people at Chipotle, and it worked. So. And it was super invigorating and and I was really, I guess I believe in the American dream. Like I really believe in it. I see a lot of sort of assaults on that in the media.
Give me a definition. We all believe in the American dream, but my American dream is pretty specific. It is economic mobility. It is choice to make your own decisions. And most importantly, I think it is the ability to take risk. And that people who take risk are not understood. People think that, well, you're just lucky. You just happen to be there. You were lucky. No, it's the American dream is hard work and taking that risk. What is the American dream to you?
Well, I agree with that. Let me start by just mentioning, so I married an English girl some years ago. Okay, so I'm married to an English woman. All right, and so I've been to England with her, and I've learned about England through her eyes. And basically, England's a good friend of ours, and we think of England as, oh yeah, they're nice folks in England. And it's great, I love England. But there's something very different about England. In England, in order to get a job, it is important to whoever's interviewing you who you are, meaning really who your parents are,
the caste.
where you went to school. It's still a caste
Comes back
system.
from the Lord system. It comes back
Yeah.
from when if you wanted to have a tea company, you had to get it okayed by the Queen. This
Right.
is the Queen's
And that's
tea company.
degraded a lot. Let's face it. It's not what it used
But
to
still,
be.
it's not.
But it's
not
still there.
woven into their blood.
Right.
And in America,
it is in their blood over there.
Right.
Here, it's really not. I mean, yes. Does luck play a role in what happens to us? Sure, it does. I've had some lucky breaks, no doubt about it. Does it matter that you had great parents versus irresponsible parents? Of course, it does. Does it matter that you were born in a place with a great school system versus a not great school system? Yes, those things matter, and that's too bad. And there's a lot of those things that we should address and as best we can. There's a lot that can be done, no doubt about it. But in this country, it still matters more than anything, not who you are or who you were born to. It matters who you are in terms of your character. That's still what matters most in this country, and as long as that's what matters most.
A lot of people who would disagree with you right now.
A
lot of people who say, no, identity is how the world, you can't get a break if your skin color is this way, if your sexuality is that way, no, then you're oppressed.
There's a lot we need to do. So let me just say, from a defensive standpoint, just sort of backtrack and say what's true about what you just said. I think, there is a lot of work we can do in this country to make it so that there is more equality of opportunity. Okay, less concerned about the outcome, that there's more rich people of this color than that color. Let's not focus on that, at least for 20 seconds. What I think really can happen, and that we can do a lot better in this country is have a higher degree of equality of opportunity. So I do think it's a pity that there are inner city kids who are getting a lousy education and some kids who are getting a great education just by where they were born or what neighborhood they were born in. That's a shame. Doesn't need to be that way, and we should fix it. But on the other hand, there is no country in the world that's anything close to the United States in terms of someone's ability to be born of whatever color in whatever place and have a chance to do something that's really powerful and important to themselves, to their family, and to the country. I just don't think there's any close second place to the United States.
The American dream is what then? Stop drinking the water, drink the good stuff.
I drank that and that dried my mouth out, and so I'm going to alternate here, I'm going to be responsible.
Why, you're not driving.
No, but you're filming me, so I've got to be really.
I got it.
On film, I got to be really responsible.
Good point.
So what's the American dream? The American dream is, in some respect, it's the feeling I have in my heart when I see the flag. And that feeling is when I see the flag of the United States, I know that this is a place that where I can matter, no matter who I am. Anyone can matter. Anyone can make a difference. Anyone can say what they want to say. Anyone can, develop and express their uniqueness however they'd like to develop and express it without fear of retribution. It's a place where when the police show up, you're in deep trouble and the police show up, you're usually glad instead of going, oh shit, now the police are here. Now I've really had it. Right. It's a place where there's relatively.
By the way, what you say on that, people don't understand. In most of the world, if you're a victim of a crime, the last people you're going to call are the police.
Yeah, people don't understand that, but I've spent a lot of time in Africa and some other third world, you might say third world countries, and in those countries, corruption is the norm,
right?
And intense corruption. What I've heard that the number one employer, basically outside the United States, the number one employer in the whole world, private security. Yeah. This is the number one employer. So when you make any money in a foreign country, you get a little dough in your pocket, you're going to spend the first half of it to defend the second half of it. You're going to defend the first, and to defend your family and to put guards up around your house because someone, might come and take it. And if that someone doesn't come and take it, and if someone does come to take it, if you call the police, now you've really lost it. Okay, because the police are corrupt in most countries.
I talked to a cop I knew who had a few years on him, and he said he pulled over a woman, turned out to be foreign. She was speeding or something.
What state?
It was here in Colorado.
Okay.
But she was a foreigner. And he just said, well, don't do it again. I'll let you off with a warning.
Yeah.
Please be careful. And she looked kind of upset. And she said, so you're going to follow me home? And it didn't register to him that the South American country that she came from, if a cop doesn't harass you, the reason is he's going to follow you home to have sex with you, and otherwise you might end up in jail. And we take that for granted, and it blew this guy's mind.
There's so much we take for granted.
It blew my friend's mind that that in other parts of the world, that's what happens. That is what they think of government, and that's the fear they have of government.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah. I mean, look, in the United States, when you're at a cocktail party, people might ask, oh, so what do you do? Right? That's a common question. What do you do? Or they want to get it. What do you do?
Right.
So what's your deal? They ask what you do, and there's countries where that might even be offensive, because how about just get to know me first? Okay. But what's worse, to say, what do you do? Or, so where'd you go to school?
Right.
Who are your parents? And they start to, so this is a thing, like in England, and I'm not trying to crap on England, wonderful place. But, it's important to someone at a cocktail party, who are you? Are you worth my time? Are you
Were you born to the right people?
Right. And in the United States, there are countless examples, right, of people who came from, really, really difficult circumstances, had to struggle mightily, and overcame that struggle to do things that were just unbelievable, hugely powerful, hugely successful. And
What do you say to people who say, no, the system's rigged? The system is rigged. That there are cronies, and those cronies are tied in with government. There are cronies, they're tied in with their friends they met from college. So you come up here and you talk about economic mobility and this ability to be able to chart your own course. But come on, man, the system is rigged.
if the system's that rigged, how could it be that I could go into Chipotle and decide to do everything I could to empower the people at the quote-unquote lowest rung of the organization, the entry-level people, of whom we had at 75,000 at one point during my time at Chipotle. How could I go in and put my trust and all my effort and all my love and attention and curiosity and into this group of 75,000 people, and they start going up through the ranks like crazy. I mean, like I said, 10,500 promotions to manager just in 2015 while I was there. That's just one year. I happen to remember the numbers, so I'm using that year. But it was, like that every year. We had loads and loads of promotions up, from these people who came from all over the world, by the way. There were immigrants and there were locals, right? And there were women and there were men. And there were, black people and Hispanic people, and there were, Pacific Islanders, and there were Asian people, and there were white people. And I put all my effort to making sure that we had a structure that would empower them and help them move up through the ranks to become managers. And they did. And when they did, guess what happened? They were unbelievably successful. They powered us to the best, sort of economic and financial results of any restaurant company, essentially. We had cheap prices for our food, but we had the highest margins. We had our stock price went crazy. It went from about $1 a share when I started to $758 at the high during my time there. And it was all because of these people who benefited hugely from their upward ascension into these executive positions where they were given stock options. And so,
Are you saying that if business does it right?
Yes.
If business does it right, and there's a market mechanism. I mean, you're competing against Qdoba, you're competing against Taco Bell, you're every mom and pop Mexican place there is. You're telling me that business is part of the solution to give people the opportunity to shine, to change their lives.
What I'm trying to do with a lot of my time now, what I'm trying to do with my book, what I'm trying to do with my docu-series, is I'm trying to actually demonstrate to people the power of actually leading with love and care and concern and curiosity and a desire to help others. At Chipotle, we had this foundational principle that I announced. It was like my first or second day on the job. I announced that, we're going to put in place a culture here at Chipotle where each of us is rewarded based on our effectiveness in making the people around us better. And then I also defined, our goal was to create what's called a restaurateur culture at Chipotle. But basically, it's a culture where a general manager creates a team of top performers empowered to achieve high standards. Top performers, empowerment, high standards, okay? But I defined top performer very carefully. A top performer is someone who had the desire and ability to perform excellent work, and through their constant effort to do so, elevated themselves, the people around them, and Chipotle. So, basically, the idea of a top performer is not just to do great work, but to make others better. As business leaders start to understand more the power of actually instituting a culture where not only do you believe in your people, but you give your people more and more power. You give your power away to your people. You give your people the best training, the best tools. You give them everything you can to help them ascend and to give them the tools to help them make the people around them better. Then all of a sudden the business will take off. Yes, I believe that business is the birthplace of some of the greatest solutions that can come about for humankind. And at Chipotle we had, during the time I worked there, I think we had close to 1 million people that worked there. And, from all the notes I get from them, not at one time, okay, not at one time, but during the course of 13 years, and we were hiring a lot of people, and, there's a lot of turnover in the restaurant industry. People go off to do other things that they had their eyes set on. But We had, and the notes I get from people are universally positive, and not just positive, but like, thank you so much for building the culture which changed my life. And I heard so much of that. That's what motivated me to write the book, because they told me to.
Tell me about the failures, though. You can't tell me. I mean, anything.
You mean people who came in and failed?
Yes, or the people who came in and more than failed. They tried to rip you off, or the guys you had to fire.
Listen,
you cannot have an organization that large without a lot of bad hires, right?
Yeah, I mean, there are people who come into the organization and perhaps don't have our best interests at heart, maybe don't really buy into the vision of what we're trying to do, maybe don't care that much about the people around them.
Give me my $10 an hour and let me go home.
Yeah, and there's people like that. And the fact is that within the culture we created at Chipotle, those people would usually weed themselves out. And yes, we had to fire people sometimes, and yes, there are people who stole from us. There are always some bad things that happen in the organization, but you have to ask yourself, generally speaking, what's going on here? Why are the people who do leave, why are they leaving? Are top performers leaving, or are people who are not performing that well leaving? And at Chipotle, generally, our top performers were sticking around. They were satisfied. They felt good. They felt empowered. They felt like they could do more and more and more. And that was, most of the people we had. Yeah. And there were some people who weren't top performers, and they weren't into it. They didn't get it, or they were distracted by something else. It wasn't their moment to shine at Chipotle.
I want you to expand on this in that I feel like we're at a crossroads. And I'm, not to get into political policy or anything else, but right now, what do you think?
It's good.
Yeah.
I like it. I never had that one.
Well, I like it because a friend gave it to me and I didn't have to pay for it.
Well, that's cheap SOB. But.
Yeah, you never bought me a Chipotle. Anyway, I think the country is teetering right now. And the idea of empowerment, individual empowerment, is strange to some people and really scary to other people. That I don't want that kind of individual empowerment because I don't want to, I could make a bad decision.
But you have to have a culture where people aren't afraid to make mistakes. That's something that's absolutely cultural. Okay, so if you have a disempowered culture, people are afraid to make mistakes and they're paralyzed and they don't want to innovate and they don't want to do anything wrong, so they just keep their head down. Okay, but if you have an empowered culture, you create a culture where you want the best out of someone. You want to help to develop them to be the very best version of themselves. You might even say completely selfishly, we want the best out of you, so we're going to put you in a culture where you're at your best. Now, that happens to be best for you, and it happens to be best for me as the CEO of the company. It's a win-win. Most things, by the way, are win-wins. It's not a zero-sum game.
Let me see if I can articulate this. The idea of individual empowerment right now, that you can make decisions for yourself, you can make decisions for your family, and even at work, because I think a lot of good people go to work and they feel like cogs. They feel like this is you're part of the machine. I don't own the machine. I'm rented by the machine. I put my sprocket on, and then somebody says good job there, and that's why we gotta build up our unions to protect us, because the only way I'm gonna have more is if you guys have less, rather than what you're talking about. And I really sense a battle of visions here, that no, there is more than enough, that there isn't a limited amount for all of us to have. There is an unlimited amount.
And it's more than that. So yes, we live in a country of incredible abundance. Okay, there's so much to go around. Okay, but also we live in a system that is not a closed system. So in a closed system, like if you and I are in a little ball and there's $10, all right, and if you have 4, I've got 6. But if you wrestle and get 6, I've got 4, and if you get 8, I've got 2. That's a closed system. Closed systems don't exist very often in real life. Okay, the fact is, as each of us gets
go to North Korea and say that.
Well, as each of us gets better in this country, as each of us feels better, does better, is healthier, is the best version of ourselves, is able to work harder, is able to be empowered by their boss or their company or their leader or whatever, their community, their church, that helps all of us. So it's, as someone gets better right now in a different part of this country, and has a better life and is more innovative and can invent more stuff, and that helps me. Now, how does it help me? I can't describe exactly how. It's one of those butterfly, sneezing around the world type of deals. But the reality is, the more people have success in this country, the more everyone else has success. It is a rising tide which lifts all boats.
You're talking, I don't want to put words on it that scare people, but you're talking about capitalism. You're talking about the business world. You're talking about people taking risk
It's not. Yeah, it's not. I wouldn't say just capitalism, right? Because capitalism usually refers. People usually think of money as capitalism, as opposed to talent.
Right.
You know,
or
goodness.
let me use the word free enterprise then, or however you want to put it. That planned systems make it really hard for somebody to do what you're talking about, to make something better.
You say planned systems?
Socially planned systems, central planning.
Yeah.
Come into my wonky world, you'll understand. Stalinistic plans. We're going to have a 5-year plan, and we're going to feed everybody. You know, instead of somebody coming along going, no, why don't we empower the cooks? And and then in 5 years, guess what? Everyone is being fed. You know, we have done more to pull people out of poverty in the last century than any time in world history, not just American history.
But if you look at the power of that, when you say we've done this, we've done that, right? I mean, you hear politicians and people, you know, quote unquote, at the top saying what we've done. If anyone's really done something powerful in this country, like anyone has ever done something powerful, it's always been by harvesting and harnessing the power of people who are quote unquote seen as ordinary, right? So it's like, it's not the elite leaders in this country, you know, who make things happen or not happen. It's the general population. So how does the general population do it? Well, what they do need from the leaders or the people at the top is they need the people at the top to be, you know, sort of enlightened in their thinking enough to know that the best way for the leaders to proceed is to empower the people who are, you know, of whom there are millions.
All right. Question about the ordinary people. Again,
and of course, no one's ordinary. So we use that term, but they're not ordinary. Right?
Ordinary, the little people.
I mean, but those statements, I know. You got to be talking to betray like a misunderstanding.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I use it as irony. Mm-hmm. Those ordinary people, you are spending.
You go right back to it.
Go right back to it.
No, I choked on this. Whatever this is.
You're spending time and your own money, still going out and talking to them.
Yes.
You like to fly. You're a pilot, right?
Yes, I became a pilot since I retired. So that was a lifelong dream. So.
I hate people younger.
Well, I mean, to the extent I'm retired, I'm doing other stuff, various stuff. I'm unemployed. Okay, kind of.
I want to be unemployed. You have choices. I still have rent. All right, but you're running around talking to these people, the ordinary people, and you are fascinated by them, and you've had a series of conversations. To get to know them, and I've come to realize it's not a shtick. You are actually curious.
How long did that take you?
Long enough. When you've been in politics as long as I have, you don't trust anybody.
Jaded. Yeah, right.
Why are you so curious about that woman you sat on a porch with in Louisiana, and you were just talking, and you were pulling things out of her? You weren't putting things into her. You were getting information out of her. Why drive that? Why so curious about it?
Well, because I learned so much.
What do you learn?
Well, I mean, I learn, if I had to put it in a category of what I've really learned from Connected, the docu-series so far, I have learned and it's not to say I didn't sort of realize this in some way, but I've learned in a very powerful way the value of struggle, okay? I've met loads of people from very different walks of life many of them have come from very difficult circumstances. And they have struggled, and they have struggled hard. And in that struggle, what they've done is the struggle has led them to overcome something difficult and to become a fantastic and better version of themselves who is excited and who their eyes are illuminated and they're ready to go do great things, a lot of these people. And my mom watched this docu-series, all 6 episodes. She goes, God, these people are incredible. She goes, where'd you find them? And I said to her, oh, they're everywhere. It's not hard to find them. I mean, we didn't go look for incredible people. We found people and they were incredible. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's like, go out there and just sit down with someone who normally you wouldn't sit down with, This started with me when I was a kid at 15 years old in Dairy Queen. I used to sit down with homeless people who came in and ask them questions because they knew a whole world that I didn't understand, And I got to know so much and they became my teachers and it was brilliant. Well, this show is an extension of that curiosity. But when you go out and start talking to people in this country, you find out a lot of things, okay? You find out, A, that people love the country, okay? Now, the media would have you believe that that's not true. False. It is true. People love the country. People love each other. The media would have you believe that they love you if you're the same color. That's bullshit, People love each other, care about each other. They cooperate. They work hard. They sometimes have great difficulty in their lives, and when they do, they have people who step up to help them. what's really going on in this country among the ordinary people, if we want to use an offensive word maybe, is something beautiful and magical and wonderful, and is indicative of the kind of healthy country we are. Now, that's not to say we're totally healthy and there's no diagnosis here and we're done with our work. Of course not. The country can get way better.
Then why is it?
But most of the problem is at the top, not with the people at the quote-unquote bottom. That's what it is.
How do you mean that? The problem's at the top.
Okay, the problem's at the top because right now our leaders tend to be divisive. They tend to be myopic. They tend to have one way they look at things and they aren't learning other things. They don't listen. They don't go out and talk to people. They aren't curious anymore. They've got their way and that's it. So they aren't curious to go understand more. They aren't curious to go sit down with people and learn what the hell is really going on in this country. And so what's going on in their world is in this elite world where they're interacting with other rich people or other powerful people to talk about what powerful people can do together. What can we do next? And to make, and it's like they're not actually getting to know the people that they're ostensibly leading. They don't know them. They don't know what real struggles are out there. They don't know what really matters most to the people who are struggling. They don't know how to help them, therefore, And so if you don't know how to help people and you're not going to be able to help them. How can you learn how to really help the people in America? Go sit down and get to know them. And that's what I've been doing on this show, because it's really fun, because I learn a ton, and because it's really invigorating to see that once it goes out on the air, you should see the letters we get back from people. I mean, people have said things like, this show should be mandatory viewing in every high school, every junior high school, and every elementary school in the country, and thank you for doing this. God bless you.
I know your mother's a fan. I got that.
Yeah, but no, we're getting an influx of so many comments like that. And all the comments are sort of that positive. And my biggest fear of this show, was that there's no hook. How can you do a show without a hook? Wait, where's the naked guy? Or where's the axe murderer?
Haven't you seen Seinfeld? You don't need a hook.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, exactly right. I remember that episode. It'll just be about nothing, right? But I was really worried. Like, I'm going to go do the show because I want to do it, but there's no hook. And some of the executive producers we talked to were like, oh, but you need a hook. Like, you got to have a hook. And I was like, and all the hooks they talked about were basically something that was not genuine and authentic. So I was like, hell with it, we're not going to do that. So what I really did is just went out to really talk to people, understand them, highlight and understand their struggles, and make their wisdom available so that all of us can benefit from their wisdom. And their wisdom is extensive. Their wisdom is good. Their wisdom is helpful. Their wisdom would not lead anyone astray, This wisdom is real shit. That's great, helpful.
All right.
It's not bullshit sales stuff.
This is nice for you, the retired CEO with the airplane and the money and the time to do that. What about the other guy who is also struggling? It's one thing for you to be able to take time to learn about your employees. But that's just because you're greedy and selfish and you wanted to exploit them in order for your stock prices to go up. But if you're actually one of those ordinary people,
I've been around politics too long.
If you're actually one of those ordinary people, and do you still, can you afford the time to listen? Can you afford the time to?
You can't afford not to.
Tell me why.
Well, as CEO of Chipotle, that was a busy job. Okay, I was overseeing a company with over 2,000 restaurants, with 75,000 employees, with lots of problems, lots of lawsuits, lots of SEC guidelines and public company requirements and stock, and analyst meetings, and it was busy, right? So people said, well, how do you have the time to sit with all these people? The reality was, all that time I took to sit one-on-one with individual people is where I was able to solve the underlying problems, which once solved would set the company on a course to greatness. Okay, so for example, when you go into a restaurant and you see dirty tables, or you see slow customer service, or you see that the food's not great, or it's cold, or the customer service isn't great, most managers will start to, what I would call, swat at those symptoms. Oh, we got to teach them to clean the tables again. Oh, we got to train them again to get the food out quicker. No, that's not what your people need. They don't need to learn to clean a table. People know how to clean a table. If they're not doing it, it's not because they don't know how. Stop training them and understand that the real problem is the leader. The real problem is that the leader has not given them a vision that they care about, has not told them how they fit into that vision, has not told them how that when they start working towards that vision, it's going to help them achieve their own goals and their own dreams and their own desires. So and that's what empowerment is about. You help someone become the best version of themselves so that they, by doing what they want to do for their own selfish reasons, are actually advancing the company's goals. And
So the apocryphal.
and this is the difference between management and leadership, right? Management is getting someone to do what you want them to do, and leadership is getting someone to do something that they want to do that also happens to advance what you are trying to accomplish.
Yeah, the old story.
And that's what our government can do.
The old story is.
And isn't doing.
Right. I agree. The old story is, guys, they're putting bricks on top of bricks, and somebody walks by. What are you doing? I'm laying bricks. A guy down the road is doing the same thing. What are you doing? No, I'm building a wall. And all right, the other guy, what are you doing? I'm building a church. And they're all doing exactly the same thing.
It's a great story.
But it's what they're doing. Now, I understand, I'm going to push you on this.
Yeah.
I understand the guy who's building a church.
Yeah.
So I am laying the brick, and I am building a church. I see what it's going to do in the future.
Yeah.
I see how it's going to change the world and help people. So I'm cutting onions at Chipotle or any restaurant. Yeah, I don't want to build Chipotle. I don't want to build. I'm going to make the stockholders a lot of money. I'm glad I'm doing this.
No, but do you want?
So what am I building when I'm chopping that onion?
You're learning how to focus on, at this moment, cutting an onion, a small detail, which, when compiled with a bunch of other small details, done excellently, can create a wonderful restaurant experience, which will cause customers to want to come back often, which will help you to have a really successful individual restaurant. And while you're doing that, you're learning to teach others to do it, to help lead others, to help the place, to help this business, which with a normal Chipotle was, let's say it's about a $3 or $4 million business. You're learning how to make a $3 or $4 million business really successful, and you're learning how you can be and are a critical part of its success. Without you, it wouldn't have that kind of success. And then you're learning how to teach others to do it, so you're becoming a leader yourself. And then you come out of all that realizing, oh my God, I am helping, by cutting this onion at this moment, but the next moment I'll be doing something else, am helping to build an incredible business, which is changing the way people think about and eat fast food, which is going to offer more and more opportunities to tens of thousands of other people who are going to come in and have a wonderful experience like I'm having, who are going to be able to become managers and leaders themselves someday. And as they achieve these different higher levels of leadership, are going to be able to feed their families and have a better lifestyle and have the power and ability to be of use and help to thousands of other people, or at least tens to start with, hundreds later.
This is why I find it so very offensive in the last year to hear the term essential worker, as if the king goes down. Your job,
deemed essential.
You are essential,
and you are not
essential.
By the way.
You are not essential.
Yeah.
You're essential because you give you're a pharmacist and you give out those medications. That's essential. Well, the guy who's driving the truck that gets the pills to your place has got to be essential.
How much less essential is that person?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But we don't connect it. Let's leave it on this. You mentioned the guys at the top in government, what they don't get.
Yeah.
If they would listen. I think there are a lot of people on the bottom who have been beaten down, feel beaten down, that they don't see that when they're chopping that onion or they're laying the brick. What are you doing? I am doing this, and I get $15 an hour when I do this.
Right.
And it breaks my heart when I hear people describe their work that way.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Because I find work to be the source of dignity,
the
source of purpose.
I've loved every job I ever had, and I've had some pretty ones that people call lousy.
Right. And to hate your job is a bit of hating yourself. You should not be doing that if it causes you hate.
Right.
It's something you have to do. It's like, there's no learning in it. And so those people really do gravitate to a system where somebody says, you are essential. You are not. You get a guaranteed outcome. You don't get a guaranteed outcome of opportunity. You get a guaranteed outcome of, hey, if I'm gonna make the same money on unemployment that I'm gonna make on this job, and I don't have to smell onions, why would I do that? But there's something in the American spirit that says, give me something for nothing. That is offensive to who I am.
People really do want, to feel. I mean, there's one thing I say about in the docu-series is all of us in this world want the same thing. We all want to be seen, valued, understood, and loved. Okay? When you go in and take a job, any job. I mean, I used to be a mechanic. I was a janitor. I've had a lot of jobs, car part salesman. I've had a lot of jobs that people would call lousy. Okay? Minimum wage jobs, many years of that. But, if you go into those jobs and look at them as an opportunity to show what you can do, to do something the best you can, to give more value, to your employer than they're having to pay you, that's a great thing to do. And when anyone I know sits, begins a job and really takes it seriously and tries to be good at it, they'll always find a great deal of satisfaction from that. And then inevitably, in this wonderful country, they'll move their way up through the ranks, because there are always people looking for great talent and talented people who are hardworking, and there are people looking for them. I was always looking for those, at Chipotle, and I was looking for them at the law firm, and I was looking for them at every job I've ever had. I was looking for great people who really wanted to do the best they could. I remember when I was in West Virginia filming one of the Connected documentaries. I met this wonderful, wonderful woman, and she had come back to her little town in West Virginia, and she went back to the house she grew up in, but all 9 of the houses along there were empty. There's no one living there. And when she came back, people said, "There's no jobs here. You can't get a job." And within a few weeks, she got a job. And a few weeks after that, she got a second job. And then she began to raise her grandchildren, because her daughter died of an overdose. So it was really, really, really tragic. I mean, her circumstances couldn't be that much more tragic. Watched her own daughter die of an overdose. Had grandkids that she had to come back and take care of, in a place where all her relatives had died, in a town that is in McDowell County, West Virginia, which is the poorest county in the United States, has the highest opioid death. In the poorest state with the highest opioid death and lowest life expectancy. I mean, she went to, arguably, and not even arguably, she went to, the worst place she could have gone in the United States if she was to find a way forward for herself and her grandchildren. And you know what she found? She found a way forward for herself and her grandchildren. And she found a way forward where she was smiling, and she was filled with dignity, and she was filled with pride. Her name was Shantanya, and Shantanya said to me, when I said, well, what is it with the unemployment? Is tough? And she goes, well, a lot of people, they don't, they just get the check. They get the government check.
Get the dole.
And there they call it the check, and they even teach their kids, hey, soon enough you'll get on the check. She told me this, right? And I was like, wow. I said, why do you think so many people are on, are waiting for the check? And she goes, well, I don't know. I don't think they want to work. And I said, well, and she said, but I said, and this is, you can see this in the docu-series, this part. She goes, I said, I don't know why they don't want to work, but what are they doing? Sleeping all day? Because nothing comes to sleepers but dreams. That's what she said to me.
Really?
Yeah, and she said that to me. But you watch the show. It's she is filled with life. She is filled with wisdom, and she's filled with the willingness to struggle, knowing, as she does, that when you struggle, guess what? Good things happen. When you struggle, and you struggle with the right mindset and the right heart and a desire to do better and help your kids and help yourself and help other people, things go wonderfully. And she's, she's this wonderful, beautiful person who has these kids who are, grandkids who had this tragedy of their mother dying, but who are now, they've got this wonderful grandmother raising them, and they're in a situation that was hopeless is not hopeless. A situation that was dire is not dire. A situation that was something we might read about in the paper in a bad way is now something to celebrate, and good for her.
That can be repeated. Not
it's
just
being
once,
repeated over and over, all over the place.
and it can happen nationwide.
Yeah, and I'll say this,
planet-wide.
John. The people in this country, generally, the people I'm meeting, they believe in the country, they believe in each other. The division we see is mostly, these are seeds sown by people in positions of power who have seen that when you sow seeds of division and you're divisive, it's very powerful. People will,
But you understand, in the world of politics, there is conflict. That's what it is. You're a lawyer. You go into a courtroom, there is conflict. You have rules of how you do that conflict.
Right.
Politics has rules that does this. You cannot.
But it doesn't really have to be conflict. And take your lawyer example. Do you know how many cases go to trial? Very few.
I would
It's like
imagine.
98% are settled.
Right.
Okay. How do you settle a case? By conflict? No. You got to settle a case by finding a way forward that both of you can agree on, even if you don't love it. Okay? You got to come to something you both agree on. You got to come to commonality in order to solve big problems. But yet our politicians aren't trying to find commonality. I would say that every single person who's a Democrat in this country and every single person who's a Republican in this country really wants the same things. Number one, they want to be seen, valued, understood, and loved for themselves. But number two, they want mostly the same things for the country, ostensibly, right? They want it to be a safe place. They want it to be a place of abundance. They want it to be a place where people can, do great things. They want it to be a place that's safe. They want it to be a place where they can love each other and worship who they want and basically, do what they want with their free time and work hard and get something for working hard. Well, guess what? This is a place where you can do that. Can it be better? Of course it can.
But at the end of the day, when it comes to politicians, there's an election, and there's usually two of them up. And that is the zero-sum game. Yeah. One of you is going to win, one of you is going to lose.
That's true.
And that's where that comes from. Do you think there was a time where politicians fought, and we had big fights, and then we went out for a drink?
Right.
You know, I remember that, even in just the 30 years I've been doing this, you know, the difference between the all-out war, I'm going to win at all costs, versus, you know, we're going to fight. I won this. I remember when Reagan got his first big tax cut, which really energized the economy and started bringing us back. Tip O'Neill gave him a call, and there was, you know, well, you know how this system works, buddy. You won, congratulations, but I'm going to get you next time. And
yeah, right.
And that's the way it was. All right,
that should
last
be the
question.
way it is.
People want to see the docu-series, of course. Love is free. Guac is extra.
Yeah, and if they want to see the docu-series, so if you go to our website, is loveisfree.com. Loveisfree.com. And if you go to that website, it talks about the book, it talks about the docu-series. You can order a copy of the book, and you can even say what you want me to write in the book if you want me to write something in it for you on that website. And then also it'll tell you where to find the docu-series and whatever, and you know, some other stuff about what else we're up to. So.
You 1%ers, I hate you all.
Well, it's nice to be hated by you, John. It feels all warm and fuzzy. Maybe that's the scotch or bourbon. Whatever.
Thank you much.
Hey, thank you, John. Nice to hang out with you.
If you enjoyed that conversation, by all means, click one of these other great programs. We have the best conversations with the most fascinating Coloradans. And subscribe to our channel. Just click down below and hit that little bell button too. You don't want to miss a single show.